Yeah, we should move on to speaking biblical Hebrew in these lectures. I would tell you that if I were to try that, I would have to be, to think about it. I'm not a native biblical Hebrew speaker. You know that I'm a native modern Hebrew speaker, and I'm also an expert on biblical Hebrew. But it would not be like intuitive for me to start speaking biblical Hebrew. I would have to think, is what I'm saying completely biblical? Is it, or maybe it is influenced by later dialects or foreign languages and so forth and so on. So it would be a challenge not just for you, it would be a challenge for me as well.
What is the biggest difference between modern Hebrew and biblical Hebrew that you find?
Ooh, it's a really very big
Aside
question.
from modern words.
Yeah.
So it's not just modern words, it's all the words that are post-biblical. You can be you call the New Testament new, but it's not like new. I hope your donuts are new in a different sense, right?
Yeah.
So everything that is post Hebrew Bible is I don't want to say out of the game, but because some of the words that we have in later sources probably were used in the biblical times. So that's as far as the lexica, that would be different. But it's not just the lexica. We also have other questions. We have questions of phonetics. We've talked previously today, just today, we've talked about the pronunciation of certain consonants in Hebrew. Okay, so if we clear this, okay, interesting as it was, we have the letter tzadi. Okay, we said that we pronounce it like a ts, ts, but originally it was pronounced as a so, as an emphatic form of the so, still pronounced like that by Yemenite Jews and Iraqi Jews. Okay, only when they pray, really. The everyday life, most of them already speak in a regular Israeli accent. So there would be phonetic differences, not just with the consonants, also with the vowels. Okay, I teach you that this and this and this are pronounced exactly the same, right? I've taught you that in the past. You understand that I'm kind of giving you a version that we all understand. This could not be, or at least these two could not have the same sound originally, because then they would not exist in different form, right? If you create a system, okay, of representing sounds by graphic signs, and you have one sound, let's call it the ah sound, you would not create two different signs representing it. It doesn't make any sense. So it must have been different. In what way was it different? That is a big discussion. So you would have phonetic differences, both in the consonants as well as the vowels. Okay? You would have...
Sadiq.
That's just one example of one letter. We could have this discussion concerning almost every letter. Okay, what was the original pronunciation? Was, by the way, the pronunciation identical all throughout Israel in biblical times? Because we have the dialectal divisions as well. So that makes the picture even more complicated. So these are phonetic differences. Orthographic differences. Okay, we write with this script, right? Aleph, Tav, right? We have the word it, all the way from Aleph to Tav. But 2,800 years ago, nobody wrote with this script. Only this script was used.
Okay. Is it
so that is Paleo Hebrew.
Yeah.
Called Paleo Hebrew or Ancient Hebrew, right? And this is orthographic differences.
Nathaniel, just a question, but there were more than 22 in those days, no?
More than 22 what?
Alphabets.
When you say alphabet, do you mean sounds or do you mean signs?
Okay.
Letters. Okay.
Symbols.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so that's also a good question. So we had Hebrew uses 22 letters, 22 signs to represent 23 consonants. Okay. We have the shin and the sin. Okay. So this is why there is a one discrepancy of one between these two numbers. But originally, right? Originally, in an earlier stage, there must have been or more. We know there were more consonants. Doesn't mean that every sound gets its own letter. Okay, it really depends when you do that. When you build the system, think of English. Okay, English doesn't have, other languages do, doesn't have a letter for ch, this sound. So you use like ch, chocolate, okay? But, or choke, but you don't have a letter for it, okay, as other languages may have, like in Russian, okay? So it's a complicated subject. So we've talked about phonetics, we've talked about orthography. You would have differences in morphology, though I would say that in morphology, the differences would be minor. Okay. We've talked about so far about lexica. We've talked about phonology. And orthography. Okay, now we're talking about morphology. Okay, morphology, modern Hebrew is closely related to biblical Hebrew. There are some smaller changes. Usually the changes are bigger in the spoken language rather than the normative grammar, but there are differences in the normative grammar as well. In the way words are shaped, right? The form of words. But again, I would say that this would be the fewer, where you would find less differences. Okay. Then you would have differences in the okay, so it depends what type of morphology, but there are certain morphological structures that we don't use, like the vayiktol, which is so prevalent in biblical Hebrew narrative, okay, is simply not in use in modern Hebrew. When someone uses this form, you know they're deviating from the standard of the language and purpose. They want to use a phrase, an antiquated parable. They wanna create kind of an archaistic flavor to what they're saying. Okay. I'll give you a phrase, okay? Vayakom hagezer vayake et haganan. Literally translate as the carrot stood up and stroked the gardener. Okay, you want to say that someone who was nurtured by by a person turned back on them and now is trying to kind of overpower whoever nurtured him. Okay, so people use the biblical form vayiktol, even though it's not used in everyday life. Vayakom. Okay. So we have a vayakom with a kamatz katan usually. Vayakom hagezer vayake et haganan. Okay, the carrot stood up and stroked the gardener. Okay, again, not used in regular modern Hebrew storytelling as it is used in biblical Hebrew narrative. Okay, that's a bit about morphology. We don't use the vekatal either. So we don't use the vaiktol and the vekatal. We use the katal and the yiktol. We call them past and future. And we use the participle. We call it present. There are syntax differences. Morphology, moving on to syntax. And obviously pragmatics or discourse analysis or pragmatics. Here are syntax, the standard biblical Hebrew word order. Definitely in the narrative is verb, subject, object. In biblical Hebrew, it is subject, verb, object. There are other differences as well. And pragmatics, very hard to tell exactly. That there are definitely differences that are related to what comes with the text, what the pragmatics of the text that are oftentimes not reflected in the syntax, though there are some similarities, like putting elements that you want to focus on first. I think it's very common in various different languages. So there are differences between modern Hebrew and biblical Hebrew in all of these areas of linguistics. Okay, I think that if a modern Hebrew speaker meets a resurrected 2,800 years ago biblical Hebrew speaker and try to conversate, they would have hard time, initially because of the phonology. Okay, the modern Hebrew speaker would not probably understand what the ancient speaker is saying because he is not used to the pronunciation of the consonants and the vowels in this way. Let's say the guy writes him a letter, okay, a note, because he doesn't understand him. So he writes him a letter. He would write that letter in ancient Hebrew, okay? If the modern Hebrew speaker would convert that, again, ancient Hebrew script into modern Hebrew script, then I believe that they would be able to somewhat communicate. There would be some differences. For instance, the ancient Hebrew guy, he would write scriptio continua. He might add a small dots between the letters, but he won't separate them, right? There would be no separation as like shalom, Shemi, my name is Yosef. There would be no separation between the words. There might be a small dot between them, separating them. Moreover, the reading mothers would probably be absent from the text, especially in the middle of words. So instead of shalom being written like this, obviously the vowel pointing would be out of the question. You would have something like this, again, in Paleo Hebrew. Okay, and then a small dot and something like this, again, might be missing this. And then
So the Dead Sea Scrolls is modern Hebrew.
no, but it's not Paleo Hebrew. Some of the scrolls are Paleo Hebrew. But even the scrolls that are written in Paleo Hebrew still have that spacing that we're used to. I think you jumped to a conclusion. We were talking about two edges of a spectrum, modern Hebrew speaker and biblical Hebrew. In the middle between modern Hebrew speaker and modern Hebrew speaker, you have a long period of time in which we find different chronolects. Okay, but saying that the Dead Sea Scrolls are not exactly the same as biblical Hebrew, that would be correct. Jumping all the way to say they are modern Hebrew, that would be overreaching. Okay?
Understood. Go
Understood.
between.
Okay, there are many go-betweens. Okay, and they might not be an exact go-between. You can have like a development to here, a development to here, and all kinds of complicated complication. It's not necessarily a continuous process all the way from biblical Hebrew to modern Hebrew. Okay. Very good, guys. As always, it's a pleasure because I get to speak about things that, I didn't know I'm going to talk about.